Hello and welcome to the 2025 Season 2 Week 10 Track Guide by Team Conti Sim Performance. This is Michael Conti here, and this is a very special week because we are running the iRacing Coke 600. 4 time slots this week, 4 hours of racing, 400 laps of racing around the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and those are always really fun races. Loved doing those last year with TCSP and looking forward to doing those again this year. So with that, we're going to go ahead and do a 30-lap run here around Charlotte Motor Speedway. I'll go over some things that you should be looking for throughout the run. Lots of grip, late afternoon setting, relatively cool track conditions, so we've got a lot of grip and a lot of ability. But the thing that we'll go over mostly over the course of this run is when to push, how hard to push, and some things to look out for as far as feedback from the car that will tell you, hey, you're doing too much, back off. Got my webcam on this week. I did it last year. I don't know why, because I never have the webcam on, but I've got it turned on here. So if you guys like that, let me know in the comments. I'll keep it on. If you don't want to see me, no offense taken. I hate to see myself as well, so I'll turn it back off. But without further ado, let's go ahead and enter the world and start the run. I've got my gloves on because we're going to be driving hard here. Going to be getting a little sweaty, but no, seriously, 30 lap run. Not going to be pushing it too hard to begin with, because like I said, there's still a component of tire saving here, even though the track temps are so low, and will continue to get cooler as we go into the evening. So I'm not going to super save by any means, but I'm also not going to blow the right front and right rear off of it. Right off the bat, talk about the gear. 5th gear setup. Shouldn't need to shift. We had some people shifting last year in the races. Maybe that's better early in the race when the times are at their slowest, but as you get later into the night, it seemed like staying in 5th was the way to go. As I get off of 2 here, I'm just going to slide my field of view forward a smidge, so I feel like I'm driving a bus here. There we go. The 5th gear all the way around. Just touching the brake into 3. It's probably not even lighting up right there, but I'm aiming to use about 5% brake early in the run. Just the softest brake that I could use. Into turn 1, no brake. No brake throughout 30. Probably won't need brake even past that. If you need brake into 1, that's fine, but again, at most it should be about 5% toward the latter half of the run. Turn 3 and 4 is the slower end of the track, a lot of off-throttle time and a lot of bumps as well. You can really feel them, you can hear them, you can see them. They are no joke. And the best way to combat those bumps is either to get below them by running on the blue line or getting way above them and ripping the fence, which is super fun. I'll show that later in this run as well. The thing you don't want to do is cut across the bumps. See, a lot of people they'll start way up here and they'll kind of drive the car down to the bottom. And they do that because they look at this delta bar and they say, oh, that was faster than pinching it off and wrapping the bottom really aggressively. And they wouldn't be wrong in thinking that, but in doing that, what are you doing? Well, you're turning across bumps, you're killing the right front on the way down the track, and then as you're coming up off the corner, you're probably still on the right front, but you might swing it over to the right rear too, if you've got a tight, loose thing going on. It's really best thing to do, just get below them and just wrap this blue line. You can see here, I get back to the gas fairly quickly, but as I'm tire saving here, I'm not really in a hurry to get back to 100% throttle. I don't need to make decent lap time. I also don't need to in the name of saving the right rear. Same thing in 1 and 2. Very easy just to plant the throttle as soon as the car compresses and lands past the entry, but in doing that, you'll probably slip the right rear. So just little things that you can do throughout the run go a long way. One of which is instead of going to 100% throttle, just go to 80, go to 90, and keep it there. Don't kill the car. Even if the people around you are killing their cars, don't kill your car. You can still make just as much lap time as somebody who's killing their car if you race smarter, if you execute better. That's the thing that's so hard to understand when you're learning or you're still growing your toolbox in any of these NASCAR vehicles, is that you don't have to drive the absolute crap out of the car to make speed. Typically, the harder you drive it, the slower you end up going. And maybe that's not true for 1 lap, 2 laps, 5 laps, but 10, 15, 20, 30 plus, that guy that was bombing it into the corner and slamming on the gas, center off, he's going to be going to the back. So don't do that. Don't get run over either. And don't give up tons of track position. So you still got to make a lot of speed, but don't kill the tires. Welcome to NASCAR racing on iRacing in 2025. We're about 7 laps in here. You can see I'm hovering around the 4s, mid 4s, low 4s, just running a pace. Not trying to do anything special here. Really aggressively wrapping the blue line at both ends. Lots of nice free turn and grip down there. We love the paint on iRacing. The paint is great. That'd make a great slogan. The paint is great. So if you're a paint sponsor out there and you want to sponsor TCSP, we've got the slogan for you, free of charge. Yeah, but paint is good, so keep it on the paint. Both ends. As you get deeper into the run, you'll certainly move up in 1 and 2. In 3 and 4 you will as well. But early on, fresh tires, or later in the race, when it cools down, the bottom is just super fast. Just like real life. Later on in the night, they'll go in the 600. The more committed they become to the bottom. Just because it's so gripped up. You're in the throttle so much. You really want to make it work down there. So starting lap 10 here. Still in the 4s. Big lift on entry, full lift at both ends. Don't keep any maintenance throttle in it. Don't do a partial lift. I know it's tempting. I know it's got enough grip to pull that off in 1 and 2, but don't do it. If you do not lift all the way off the gas, you are keeping that differential, I'm going to say locked. It's not really locked. It's not like a locker. But so you understand, any partial throttle is going to keep the car tight. And in 1 and 2, where you're already front limited as you land, you don't want any partial throttle. Going to be completely off the throttle, go over the crest and into the landing zone in a free roll, and then pick up throttle after that. Same thing in 3 and 4, don't want any partial throttle. Just makes you too tight. Even in qualifying, I don't have any maintenance throttle. I've got a very quick, like, split-second lift just to get the thing to set and rotate, and then I'm right back on the gas. So I'll start moving around here a little bit. So this is the middle, obviously, in 1 and 2, and this really seems to become advantageous later in the races when the bottom rubbers up. Before the bottom rubbers up, it's like you go from the bottom and then you go all the way to the top. You don't really run the middle because there's not enough time gain. But later in the race, you can kind of commit to that 1 lane up approach in 1 and 2 and really make a lot of time doing it and stay out of the really greasy stuff down low. You'll see here I'm below the seam with the left sides. Right sides are probably on it or slightly above it. And it makes really good momentum off the corner and down the back. Feels good. We'll do the same thing in 3 and 4. Run the middle here. Again, watch out for those bumps right there. You really start to hit them. Boom, boom, boom. And it's a little slower than running the bottom. But that's because we're on fresher tires on a clean track, so it makes sense. Now I'll go up another lane. Call this lane 3. So 1 is the bottom, 2 is a lane up. Now we're in lane 3. So committed to above the seam with the left sides. And pretty good right there. Decent momentum down the back. We'll do the same thing here. We'll go up to like lane 3, which is a little higher than I was before. And again, really no time gain until very, very late exit, but still a net loss. Now we're going to rip the fence in 1 and 2. Lots of throttle, and then right back on it. So you don't really hit that big compression zone when you run up top. You just keep it wound up, and that really helps the speed. Center off. You can see I'm pulling into the green heavily into 3. And I'm going to do the same thing into 3. Oop, a little wide on entry. Gave up a little bit right there, but I'll gain it back a little bit. It just kind of missed the turn-in point there. Not as advantageous in 3 as it is in 1 and 2, but still that top will come in eventually. Back to the bottom in 1 and 2, you'll see I'll gain about 7/100ths. Entry to center, I'll lose it all, plus some back off. Should be a net positive in 3 and 4, a little break on entry, get it down to the bottom and just start feeding throttle. And to full throttle, a little loose right there. come across the line, about a half a tenth in the green versus the lap before. We'll go back a lane up, full lift, back on it. Gonna lose entry to center, maybe a little gain on exit. No, that wasn't a gain at all. So that's not very good right now, which goes back to my point in saying when you're on a clean track, that middle really doesn't do you any good. You either want to be on the bottom or ripping the fence. Bottom in 3 and 4 feels like the place to be, so I'll stay down there. I'll go back to the top in 1 and 2. Back to the top in 1 and 2. Widen out that entry, and even before I land into the corner, I'm back in the throttle, hard, just digging. And pretty good. Gain down the back stretch versus the lap before. Back to the top in 3 and 4 to try that. Doesn't feel like anything's really good right there right now. Gain on exit versus running the bottom, it's about even on lap time. But truly feels like the bottom is the place to be at both ends right now. Full lift, back to the throttle. A 10th gain should become maybe a slight loss into 3. Coming back, coming back, coming back. Just a slight loss, 200ths. Back to the bottom in 3 and 4, half a tenth as I exit, but will be a loss as I get to the start finish, just no momentum. We'll go bottom 1 and 2, top 3 and 4. Bottom 1 and 2, full lift, back into it. And I should mention that I am at the loosest point of the run right now. This 15 to 22, 3, 4 area seems to be when the right rear is at its worst. I think I said I was going to run the top, so if I did, I apologize. But yeah, this is the loosest I'll get, and then on the back side of this, the car should start to tighten back up. Doesn't become tight, just becomes neutral, which is good. Back to the top in 1 and 2. Losing, losing, losing. Should really start to gain hard right here. There it goes. Should pull back into the green by the entry to 3. A little more brake there into 3, right back on the gas. Right rear up against the fence, a little loose across the bumps, but still pretty good lap time overall. Back to the bottom to cool them off. If I stay up top, I'm going to torch the right rear, so I don't want to do that. Nice grip right there. Be a little slower by the time I get into 3, but manageable. Should pull back into the green as I run the bottom. Four hundredths, 500ths. Little in the red. Just tire deg doing its thing right here. The 30 flats, 20 in, started in the 4s, so not a whole lot of fall off. But still enough to make a difference if you kill your tires and those around you don't, or if you have a better setup than other people. But most of it's going to come back to the driver. You have the best setup in the world. If you destroy the tires, it doesn't matter what you have, you're going to suck. So don't destroy the tires. We'll go not quite all the way to the top, but kind of lane 3.5 here. Feels good, staying above that seam. Yeah, nice exit. Good momentum. Down the back about even. Try a little different approach here. Enter above that seam a bit, cut down below it, and yeah, just sort of slips the rear. Not great. Back to the bottom. Not tracking out aggressively, as you can see off of 2. It seems like when you cross those seams and get closer to the wall and exit, really slides the rear. So keeping it just a bit more pinched than you typically would. Keeps that right rear temperature in check. Good 3 and 4 right there. Rolled the bottom, pulled in the green versus running a lane up. So good grip. I'll just keep it on the bottom for a couple laps here. I'll be a little more aggressive with the throttle. Pretty good, hooked up really nicely. To the bottom, a little deeper, right on that paint. Nice grip. Yeah, a little loose, You can see working the wheel just a smidge, but that's reasonable. Not sawing it 20 degrees one direction the other. Just little micro corrections to make sure I keep the rear settled. Same thing off of 2, just little micro corrections. Missed the line a bit. Didn't want to come out of the gas, so just committed and corrected. Came off the bottom a little bit earlier in 3 and 4 than I had done the lap prior. Felt like that settled the rear a bit too. So just keeping up with what the car is telling me, keeping up with how the tires are falling off, and just making slight changes to the line to mitigate whatever handling problems I'm having, which is just a bit rear limited on exit. That's my problem, which is a common trait at Charlotte, especially off of 4. So that's normal. If I made this thing any tighter, I wouldn't be able to carry enough speed entry to center. I wouldn't be able to turn down. So I've got to just be a little bit on the free side to really have that best pace possible. Go back to the top here for the last couple laps in 1 and 2, because I think at this point in the run, I should be way faster up here if this is anything like years past. And while that's not way faster, that is definitely faster, almost a half a tenth better into 3. Nice exit right there. Good momentum. And I'll go back to the bottom for 30 and just see how this shakes out. Big time gain, entry to center. Ooh, I'm getting greasy down there. I'm definitely going to be in the red by 3 and 4. Half a tenth, almost a full tenth slower by running that bottom. But still a solid lap 30 overall. So that'll complete the 30 lap run. I'll do a hot pit road entry here and try not to make a fool of myself. And then we'll go outside the car for a couple minutes, talk about some lines, reference points, things of that sort. And then that'll conclude our track guide. All right, so I'm going to pit right here. I'm going to make my typical entry into 3. Then I'm going to downshift, just get that thing in 4th gear. Drive around the corner a bit. Nope, and not going to make it. So we're going to try again. So what I felt right there was as soon as I went to the brakes, I started locking up the fronts, even though I was relatively straight. I wasn't trying to get off the track, just front limited, locking up fronts. So as I go down the back, I'm going to dial some brake bias to the rear with this pit road entry. Did that with the knob on my wheel, and now I'm going to try again. So into 3. Downshift. There we go. Come around the corner. And made it. So probably lifted a bit earlier right there than I did the first attempt. But in moving that brake bias rearward, that definitely limited some of the front locking. So that was really good. I think I actually missed pit road in last year's Coke 600, which I recovered from thankfully, but it is a very hard pit road to enter. It's also hard to exit. There's a big bump right there, and then you got this 2 levels of banking on the apron, so you're kind of just straddling it all the way through here. It's much easier to do this on fresh tires, but you can see it's very, very, very difficult. So be careful getting off of pit road 2. We had a couple people crash and come up onto the track in our races last year, and believe me, you don't want to be the person to kill a 100-lap green flag run by crashing off the apron and then taking out cars who are at speed. So don't be that person. Practice your pit road exit. Okay, so take the gloves off for a second. Go back through this replay. We'll start with the pit road entry. Not the failed one, but the good one. This is probably the failed one. Yep, so we're going to go around. All right, so outside the car. We get normal entry here. Downshift right there, so that's different. And then drive it around the corner and start braking just after the Cup Series sign on the wall over here. You should be able to see that from inside the car as you're further back in the corner. When you get to the end of that or feel like you're close to the end of that, start braking. Big braking right here. 3rd gear, 2nd gear, And you can see I roll off the brake just a bit as I cross onto the apron, because if I have that sustained 50, 60, 70% brake, as soon as I land on the apron, I'm going to lock up the fronts. So I roll off the brake a little bit, and then as soon as I get back onto the apron and I'm on a flatter surface, back to 50, 60, 70% brake. First gear just at the last second to get down to pit road speed, and then 45 miles an hour down pit road. I can see my brake is not calibrated very well. So that's probably why I didn't get onto pit road the first time either. So word to the wise, before you roll off your races, make sure your brake is calibrated. I did not do that, so learn from my mistakes. Okay, so that's the pit road entry. Let's look at a lap on the bottom and then a lap in the middle, lap up top. So let's go, this is definitely on the bottom. 10 laps in, lap on the bottom. So going to start talking about it. I'm going to talk about the entry to turn one, but I'm going to start back here as we exit the quad oval. And I think I talked about this at Kentucky too. You do not want to hug the grass, because if you do that, when you get past the grass, you're going to be angled straight up to the wall, and then you're going to have to yank the thing down into turn one. So what I do here is I give a bit of a berth to the grass to sort of round out the last part of the quad oval, and then that makes my entry arc into one just one continuous swoop in versus angle to the wall and then sharp angle back in. Just makes the whole sequence much smoother, and you can be much more consistent because you're not having to turn so much, you're not having to yank the car off the wall. I get to my highest right before the Coca-Cola banner, and then I'm going to lift just a bit past it. You can see I start coming out of the throttle, and it's a slow lift at the top to a quick lift at the bottom. And as I go over this crest and into the landing zone, free rolling. No brake, no gas, no nothing. A little bit of wheel, which will increase as I actually compress and land, but just nothing. You do not want to drive over this crest with throttle because you're going to be tight. You do not want to drive over this crest with a big swooping arc because you're going to get tight. So you really need to make sure what you do back here is correct so that when you get closer to the actual entry and you get to that crest and you land, you're where you should be, or else you're going to be tight. And if it's bad on lap 1, imagine how bad it's going to be on lap 30. So get your angle right, get your lift point right, into 1, full lift, and then right there, which you probably can't see really well, we'll go to the front of the car. The car is going to land right about there. You can sort of see the movement right there. It's kind of right at the landing spot, and then throttle should follow right there. So up and over the crest, land, throttle. Do not throttle up before you land. Do not hold throttle over the crest. Free roll over the crest, into the landing zone, start throttling up. Now, is it 100% throttle immediately? No. As you'll see here, once I find my camera, yellow, there we go. Initial throttle is 75, 80%. Now, could I go to 100%? Yes, but as I talked about earlier, if I do that, I'm going to kill the right sides. So I'm just going to keep a little bit of throttle out of it, but not too much. Then eventually I go to full throttle. But in doing so, left front is pinned to the paint, as you can see there. And as I come off of turn 2, I am nowhere near the wall. Now, as you get later in the run and you lose grip and you have traffic and the track gets worn out, you're going to track out a bit more, right? You have to be flexible. You can't watch this video and say, well, I saw him do this on this lap, so I'm going to do the exact same thing. Unfortunately, that's not how that works. It's not that easy. That's why racing is hard. That's why winning races, you get this sort of fulfillment, because it's always changing and it's hard, and you're going to be up against competition more times than not that's better than you. So what I'm saying is, don't get stuck on what I'm saying. Just take it and use it as a baseline. On this particular lap, I'm a couple car widths off the wall off of 2. And on your qualifying run, maybe on your fresh tires, that's where you're going to be. Later in the run, that's going to change. So off of 2, down the back, into 3, Coca-Cola sign, driving in way past that, start turning off the wall. At the end of the hash marks, I start turning off the wall, and then I'm lifting right at the beginning of the Charlotte, USA stars. Lift there, quick lift because I want to get on the brakes. My brakes were not really working, so no brake lit up, but I would aim for about 5% brake. And I go down into 3, and I've got a decent arc. I'm not straight lining it to the bottom, not in the way that I am in turn 1, because it's a sharper end of the track. I kind of have to widen out my entry so I have enough rotation in the center to be able to rotate and then drive off without shoving the right front. But still not a massive arc. I get down almost all the way to the bottom, and then I start throttling up. And again here, throttling up 60%, plateau to 70 to 80 to 100. Left front committed to the paint, up off the corner, tracking out more than 1 and 2, but still not trying to knock down the fence. Okay, so the next lap, I think I go and I run the, nope, maybe this next lap I run the middle. There we go. So here's the middle. So you can see already my lift point is not as far back as it was to run the bottom, because when I run up the track, I can carry more speed in because I'm running a wider radius. Start lifting at the stars versus the Coke sign. Full lift, land, back in it, and then I can get to 100% throttle much quicker because I'm not pinching it off. And because of that, I can drive down the backstretch with way more speed. Into turn 3 here. That's a normal turn 3. And a very good turn 3. Down the front. Now this is just a bit higher again, straddling this seam on entry to having the right sides just below it. Center off. Into 3. Middle lane, I'm aiming to enter just above the seam and then cut across it and straddle it center off. Now as I run another lane up, I'm driving in even a bit deeper, so now I'm lifting not at the stars, but at the actual A. Back in the gas hard, left front above the seam. Down into 3. Getting closer and closer to the wall, committed to above the seam. Lots of ripple bumps up here, so I have to be careful for that. Then there should be the lap where I start ripping the fence in 1 and 2. Let's see. Yeah, lift point, and I know that because I'm driving in a bit deeper again. About the same, actually. And then right back in the gas. You can see that right there. Big difference. Lift, back in it. Just a split second full lift before I'm right back in it and carrying the wall all the way through. I give myself a little bit of space at about the 5/8 so I can make the exit, because that wall isn't exactly perfectly round, but still, though, very committed to running up top. Same thing in 3 and 4. Came off of it a bit right there because I was tight entry, but still, when you run the fence in 3 and 4, you want to be on the fence, right rear above that top seam, which I'll show here this lap. So I think I run the fence. Do I do it again? No. I said that doesn't feel good, and I stopped doing it. Let's find the fence in 1 and 2, or 3 and 4. There we go. Entered above the top seam, and then there it is right there. Top seam, center, and then just a little turn down and exit to make the exit, but still lots of throttle. Big throttle. Lift, little brake, back on the throttle. All the way off the corner and to the start-finish line. And so overall, I think that'll do it for this week. Charlotte is a track that everybody has been on a lot if you've done any type of NASCAR racing. And if you haven't and it's your first time, welcome. But most of us have a lot of laps around here, so it's very easy to get into your habits and get into your groove and get very stuck, like I talked about. And what I'm here to tell you is don't get stuck. Take what I'm talking about in this video, but then also be constantly analyzing and assessing what's going on around you in the races. What's the fast guy doing 30 laps into a run? What's his pace early versus what's their pace later? Where's the track moving? Where are the fast cars running right now? And where were they running 10 laps ago? And continue to think about all of that as you make decisions on how to adjust what you're doing. But at the end of the day, it's still a lot of the same things. Don't kill your tires. Don't overdrive your car. Keep the track position and execute. Execute, execute, execute. Don't miss pit roads, so make sure you practice that. But it's a long race. NIS is A Open, I think, is 100 laps or whatever. It's still long enough. The Coke 600 on here is a long race. There are no stages. There are no stage points. Okay? It pays it all at the end. So take your time, be patient, work on qualifying so you can give yourself a leg up. But just know you got a long race ahead of you. A lot's going to change. Mind your P's and Q's. Make sure you're there at the end. Okay. Off my soapbox. Appreciate you all watching. I've had a good time making this video. This is 31 minutes of everything you need to know about Charlotte and the next gen car in 2025. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support of Team Conti Sim Performance. We look forward to seeing lots of winners this week and lots of success on the track. And we'll be there with you along for the ride. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next time.